Assalamualaikum and hi to my lecturers who are watching this, especially Dr. Hazli now. My name is Nur Natasha Iman and here I am about to review on the case of Elias and Rolling Stone. So this is a very well-known case in America and it is also known as a rape on campus case. I will divide this video into 3 sections, which firstly I will talk about the introduction to this case. The introduction mainly talks about what happened before the case was initiated. The second section in this video, I will be reviewing on the article that was defamatory in this case. The third section would be on the procedural history of this case, and I will end it with a conclusion. So now moving on to the first section of the video, which is the introduction to this case. So this case was filed by 3 former Phi Kappa Psi fraternity members of the University of Virginia named George Elias, Stephen Hadford, and Ross Fowler against the Rolling Stone magazine and also Sabrina Erdely as the contributing editor at Rolling Stone as well as Warner Media. They filed for a lawsuit against the defendants based on a defamatory article published by Erdely on the magazine and later followed by a podcast featured by Erdely as well. So here's a quick refresher on the fiasco arising from this Rolling Stone article. It all started on November 19, 2014 when Erdely had published an article on the magazine that described a violent gang rape of a freshman from the University of Virginia identified as Jackie. The gang rape was said to happen in the fall of 2012. The now retracted article was titled as A Rape on Campus, a Brutal Assault and Struggle for Justice at UVA, as well as a subsequent online podcast appearance by Erdely discussing about the article. The article presented a detailed account of the alleged violent gang rape of Jackie by 10 male participants, including a man named Drew, which will be explained later in this video. So this gang rape happened in a bedroom of the fraternity house at the university. All of the plaintiffs were active members of the Phi Kappa Psi fraternity in the fall of 2012, which is a relevant time frame of Jackie's alleged rape described in the article. Plaintiffs' membership in the fraternity and also the UVA class of 2013 was shown and listed in plaintiffs' Facebook accounts, Phi Kappa Psi's website, and is a common knowledge amongst current and former UVA students that they were studying there at the time. Now, plaintiffs' relevant individual distinguishing characteristics are as follows. Elias, which is the first defendant, he lived in the first bedroom at the top of the stairs on the second floor of the Phi Kappa Psi's on-campus fraternity house, while Fowler was a previous rush chair for the fraternity and a swimmer at the university aquatic facility, and thirdly, Hanford, which is the third plaintiff, frequently rode his bike on his campus in the year following his graduation. These characteristics will connect the dots of the alleged rape in the article that will be explained in the video. Now moving on to the details of the article. The main subject of the article was Jackie, which is the woman who was interviewed by Erdely and was her primary source of the article. The article mainly described how Jackie had suffered the brutal gang rape in the bedroom at the frat house. According to the article, Jackie's party date, anonymously named Drew, whom she met while she was working as a lifeguard shift at the university pool, had invited her to an upstairs bedroom of the frat house, where she was later forcibly gang raped by 7 men while Drew and a 9th man observed. The article described how the attackers encouraged one participant to rape Jackie by uttering statements like, "Don't you want to be a brother?" And this clearly shows that there was an initiation ritual amongst the frats in the university. Few months after the article was published, Erdely was interviewed as a guest on a podcast where she talks about the article and her view on the matter. She also questioned how some people in the frat house didn't even know about this and how the administration of the university had brushed off and did nothing when Jackie reported this case to them. However, 3 weeks after the online publication, Rolling Stone's managing editor issued an apology, stating that there has been appeared to be discrepancies and questionable facts in Jackie's story, and that their trust in her was therefore misplaced. Later on, Rolling Stone officially retracted the article and issued an apology to the members of the fraternity and the university's administrators and students. Now moving on to the third section of this video, which is the procedural history of the case. A complaint was later filed on 29th of July 2015 in the District Court of United States by the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs argued that they had no actual connection to the rape described in the article, and the report was based on events that simply didn't happen. Plaintiffs mainly brought 3 defamation claims, which is firstly, defamation as to the online and printed version of the article, secondly, comments from elderly on the online podcast, and thirdly, the negligent infliction of emotional distress. The plaintiffs claimed that the article was defamatory as it contained sufficient identifying facts to match plaintiffs as the rapists. Specifically when plaintiff Elias was the one who lived on top of the floor at the time of the alleged crime took place, which coincidentally suits the story well. Next, plaintiff Fowler gets the benefit on his claims because of 2 main allegations. One, that he was the Rush Chair for the fraternity, where he is in charge of every fraternity matters in the university. And 2, that he regularly swam at the university's aquatic center. The article describes how Jackie met her party date at a pool and suggested that the rape was related to the second plaintiff. They claim that the public acquaintances with the parties would have understood the alleged defamatory statement to be concerning them, even when there was no real name mentioned in the article. Plaintiffs also proved that they have suffered vicious and hurtful attacks due to defamatory article, such as social media harassments, negative treatments from close individuals, unwanted attention, as well as emotional distress, where sometimes reporters would repeatedly harass and made vicious articles about them. The plaintiffs also claimed for small group defamation, as the allegations and article had affected the fraternity group as a whole. Now let's talk about the principle of law being used in this case. New York law was applied in this case. In New York, defamation is the making of a false statement which tends to expose the plaintiff to public contempt or induce an evil opinion of him in the minds of right-thinking persons, and to deprive him of their friendly intercourse in society. And to state a claim for defamation, a complaint must be a false statement that is published to a third party without privilege or authorization, and that causes harm, as well as the allegations would be of and concerning them. It was later that the U.S. District Judge Kevin Castell granted a motion to dismiss their claims, finding that the details of the articles about the attackers were too vague and too remote to show that the article was to be concerning the plaintiffs. Plaintiffs then appealed to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, where this court has reversed the district court conclusion by allowing claims of Elias and Fowler on the ground that the article and claims was of and concerning them. However, not to the third plaintiff, which is Hartford, as the court viewed that he has failed to prove the article was concerning him. The claim on small group defamation was also granted by the court, which was initially rejected by lower court. This court viewed that the lower court had erred in decision on this claim because a reader of the article could possibly conclude that each member of the frat was involved either directly or indirectly in the alleged rapes as an initiation ritual process. Therefore, the plaintiffs can proceed under a theory of small group defamation. A settlement was later reached where the Rolling Stone paid $1.65 million worth of settlement to the plaintiffs. Here we could see that there are a few elements needed to be fulfilled to file for a defamation suit, which firstly, there's a defamation on the report which causes serious harm to reputation. Secondly, it may be reasonably understood that the article was referring to the plaintiffs, and thirdly, it has been published to the third party and that the post must be concerning them. Looking at this case, it clearly shows us how important it is to be very attentive and to be eminently particular in relying to accusations made by persons on the reports or media. That's all from me in this video. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.